You hit me hard with that Mr. T cereal.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like there were certain ones. My mom would get those little boxes, like the sampler pack of the little tiny boxes.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
eat the sugar ones first, and then it always sucked on the 12th day because your ass would be left all bran, and that's a way for any kid to start the day.
What is going on, everybody? Korey here in the middle of the day. If it's the middle of the day, then that means we're talking to somebody special for another double toasted interview. And this guy, I never thought I'd be able to speak to him, but I don't know. I don't mean in a bad way. It was one of those people that I really liked and just never thought that we would cross paths even in this way. But you see him right here, ladies and gentlemen. You know him from Man vs. Food. He always wins. And now he has a new show called Adam Eats the 80s, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Adam Richman. Adam, how you doing, man?
Thank you so much, and thank you for the very kind intro.
Well, it's very sincere too, man. I've enjoyed Man vs. Food. You know what? I just think you have just a great personality, man.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say that.
Yeah, you're a great host, and we're here to talk about your new project, along with some of the things that have happened along your career. But we're here to talk about Adam Eats the 80s.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is a show where you relive your childhood, and hopefully everybody's reliving their childhood with you, like I did, where you talk about discontinued or forgotten foods, along with some fun facts about that era, like maybe something about video games or restaurants or breakfast cereals. Anything you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so basically you hit the nail on the head. We'll go through the origin stories for brands or foods or flavors that began in the 80s and eventually became iconic on a national or global level. And then we also, through the help of some incredibly talented like food scientists and culinary engineers, we recreate and resurrect foods from the 80s that have disappeared. And we get to try them and see them again for the first time in decades. And then, yes, of course, we have to bring in, it's the History Channel, so we're going to bring in a bit of context, a bit of historical fact, and also get in. Remember, this was a day and age where, this was this ultra exciting, dynamic decade. People were spending roughly 8 hours a day on TV on average. Mm-hmm. So we get into the jingles, the commercials, the slogans, the infomercials. We redo the Ginsu knife commercial, the Juice Man juicer, and we talk about Where's the Beef and Max Headroom from Coca-Cola. So it's pretty awesome, I have to say.
It is awesome, man. You are talking my period. I have that good fortune of being a child of the 70s and 80s. About 10 years old, I crossed over into the 80s, but I was born in the 70s. But, man, all those commercials, all those things you're talking about, and some things that I had forgotten about. I got to tell you, man, you made that, and we just showed it, that Domino's breakfast pizza.
Oh, salute. I salute the breakfast pizza. I am hoping that there's enough of a groundswell that like people will see it or like make a clip of it go viral on TikTok or something like this, because that's a pizza that needs to happen again. Like the world needs to have it. During such difficult and divided and strife-filled times, the world needs a breakfast pizza.
Yeah, you know what? I hope. That's one of the things that I'm hoping that happens with this show is that you resurrect some foods out there. I never had the good fortune of having that pizza, and you made it look delicious. And I want to see some other episodes to see what else, not only that you remind me of, but things that, like I said, man, growing up in this period, there were things that I didn't miss. So it is truly educational.
And I appreciate that, and you're 100% right. Like we found out that Keebler stopped making Magic Middles cookies in the 80s, largely because they wanted to focus on hyper-producing the things that were doing very well for them, like the EL Fudge or whatever, and they retooled their whole line. Come to find, there is a Facebook group with over 3,000 people that are clamoring for the Magic Middles to come back. And I had them. You know, my mom, I was a chubby kid, so my mom wouldn't always try to keep cookies in the house. And, you know, I would have a yellow fudge at one of my friends' homes. You trade them at lunchtime. You trade desserts. And I remember like, oh, right, that's what it sounds like when it breaks. That's what it's like when you get to the middle of it. And all those sense memory things, like we went to a vintage soda collector to try the new Coke, you know, from back in the day. And he had a rip top can. And for those of you listening who don't know or watching, don't know what this is, you know, a typical metal can now, you pop it, you fold it back, but you used to rip the tab off completely on a soda can, and you'd wear it like a ring, and then you had magic powers. Or
you know what? I'm trying to see if I could show people what that looks like. The rip top can. Is this? I have a picture of a guy who's actually doing it right now. Is that what it looks like right there?
Oh no, his looks like he took the whole.
Yeah.
Looks like he took off the whole top of the can.
Yeah.
I think he did that macho thing. No. I'm talking about the way it had like the little ring, and you'd rip the ring, and you'd pull it off. The other thing was, back in the day, soda bottles were glass, and they had styrofoam labels, and it not only insulated the soda, but afterwards you'd kind of rip at that styrofoam label and see if you can get it all off in one strip like an orange.
Hold on, I'm taking this little window that popped up off of there. You know what is this the can that we're looking at? I want to show people this. I'm already looking for it. It's nothing like that, is it? Right there.
Let me see. Can you zoom in on that one?
Oh, let me see here.
It's the original. So that's the modern aluminum can. I bet if you had searched something like, you know, rip top aluminum can or rip top soda can, but yeah, that was, you'd rip that little metal bit off and then cut your knuckle and.
Yeah. Oh, I got it. That's the one right there, right?
Isn't that the modern one?
Oh, that's the modern one. You know,
the tab is still on it.
That's why people need to watch your show, man.
The tab will be ripped off completely.
Yeah, oh, I got you. It's not bringing it up, but see, that's why people need to watch your show, because I can't even find this stuff on the internet, man. But you find it all the time.
Yeah, well, that's the beautiful thing. I mean, we go to the Guinness Book of World Records largest Ghostbusters collection, the Guinness Book of World Records largest Star Wars collection, and we find an original 38-year-old unopened box of Ecto Cooler. We find an original 41-year-old bag from 1983 of Pepperidge Farm Star Wars cookies, and I'm foolish enough to try them. You'll just have to watch to see the ill-fated experiment of eating 4-decade-old butter and eggs.
So this is not only just because people are going to think this is about food, and, you know, especially what you have in a show called Man versus Food. But this is, again, all about just kind of pop culture tidbits, and nostalgia's in these days. People love nostalgia. So I think this is going to be a big success for you, man.
From your lips to God's ears. Look, the bottom line is, to make a show for the people like us that lived through the 80s, that's all well and good. But you have to make a show that's viable for people that have no personal connection to the decade. And yeah, it's this exciting, dynamic decade, and some of the biggest changes in food happen, and you need to get the context to understand the why. But so basically what I tell people is, if you lived through the 80s, the nostalgia is going to hit you like a freight train. You're going to go, I had those sneakers, I had that shirt, my girlfriend had that haircut, those shoulder pads, I had that scooter, I had those Reebok pumps, whatever it is. Then the next thing is going to be, for the people who were not alive then or are not old enough to remember it, they're just going to go, that is freaking delicious. We went to Pizza Hut headquarters in Plano, Texas, and they recreated a double-decker pizza they had in the 80s called the Priazzo. That thing is so delicious, it deserves its own holiday. And they don't make it anymore because it was just labor-intensive. We went to the very first Panda Express at the Glendale Galleria, still there. Nice. And one chef, one guy named Andy Cow, created orange chicken in 1986. And he came back and recreated it for us in the first ever Panda Express. And what it's going to do is, you're going to appreciate the stuff around you in a way that you haven't before. And for those of us that grew up realizing that the mall was the original chat room, there was no Reddit subgroup before the mall, you know, that's what we did. And for now that we're older and in our 40s, learning the context. So, for example, learning that ranchers from the 70s carried huge amount of debt into the 80s. So they sold off a huge amount of their cattle herd. Beef became more expensive, so people in fast food pivoted to chicken. Suddenly, 1979, original BK chicken sandwich. 1983, the nugget. 1985, Roy Rogers Crazy Wings. 1986, BK chicken tenders. And it's not an accident. And then 1988, Congress releases this report saying that red meat could be linked to health concerns. More chicken hits the marketplace. A millionaire has a heart attack, starts a campaign that fast food becomes healthy. McDonald's stops frying in beef fat and moves to vegetable oil. And remember, this is the decade of the microwave. So kids had agency. You had moms working for the first time, two parents working for the first time. So you had this entity called latchkey kids, kids that would come home and make their own meals. And parents trusted them to make their own meals when it's throw in box, press button, eat. So it's a huge decade for food. And plus, dude, we recreate the original OG McDonald's French fries that were fried in the beef fat.
Oh,
they're freaking delicious. They're freaking delicious. I'm just so good.
You know what? That's what you meant when because I'd read in your description, were fries from the 80s actually better than fries today? And I guess your answer is yes.
Ooh, yeah, I probably buried the lead on that one. But man, it's just, you know what it is? That's the problem, right? You go, did it taste better in my youth, or is that just nostalgia talking? And you never get a chance to verify. And to have food scientists, we went to Matson Labs in Northern California, and these people were bloody geniuses. And they recreated everything. They recreated the original Coca-Cola made with sucrose, made with sugar, instead of high fructose corn syrup, and you can taste the difference. They recreated, I mean, I met the woman who invented the Dole Whip and the Frappuccino.
Oh.
And these are brilliant minds that have developed some of the biggest flavors ever. And so to get their perspective on cola, on French fries, and then even taking it a step further and then like meeting one of the founders of Cinnabon, and you'd think, okay, you're just selling cinnamon rolls, but you're forgetting to realize it wasn't a popular food. They normally had raisins, and this father and son team waited until they found the perfect cinnamon before they did it. And so this thing that people will turn up their noses and go, oh, it's just mall fare, it's just comfort food, has a tremendous amount of culinary identity behind it. And it's, I mean, you know the Cinnabon. It's like, you know, little kiddie pool of carbs and joy.
You know, I love the way you're talking about this, because it really is living up to, and you said this already, the History Channel, because, you know, it's good to talk about nostalgia. It's great to talk about food, but there's a lot of value that you're giving here through just history and education, you know, our education and history. You know, a lot of people don't realize a lot of the history that is behind the foods that you're talking about, and the historical impact that it's had on, you know, our culture, even lasting until today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I consider myself to be especially blessed. You know, History Channel has been extraordinarily good to me. And so Sunday nights, starting at 9, I'm in another show called The Food That Built America. And then 10 o'clock is when Adam Eats the 80s comes on. And what's great is you get the contrast where The Food That Built America is about these legends, Mrs. Fields, Famous Amos, Blimpie, Subway, Dunkin' Donuts, and the men and women behind that. In Adam Eats the 80s, we get to revisit that on a much more intimate level. So, you know, I could sit there and talk on and on about the woman who founded Pepperidge Farm, or talk about Wally Amos and these awesome facts. And trust me, you're going to get those awesome facts. But then there's nothing quite like meeting the man who created Jolt Cola and holding in your hand his first sketch for the can. Yeah. Like Jolt Cola was the original disruptor in the soda market in the 80s. So popular, in fact, that as computer programming grew, Jolt was so part of computer programmer culture that the awards that they are given are called the Jolt Awards.
Really?
And here's the man who created it. There's like no better source. You know what I'm saying? Like to work with people from Domino's, you know, the breakfast pizza was offered in 1985 for 6 months. And the man with whom I'm on screen started at Domino's in 85. He's forgotten more about Domino's than most people will ever learn. And that's, you know, you're right where the rubber meets the road. Like people who worked with Ann herself at Auntie Anne's Pretzels, the man himself who created Orange Chicken. And the other thing that's really cool is we get to leave that whole Adam in a restaurant, which you've seen a trillion times, and you get to see me mess with these infomercials. So I do the Juice Man Juicer commercial, the Popeil Egg Scrambler, I do the Ginsu knife commercial, and I cut the can, and then I cut the tomato, and then I cut the rubber hose, and I cut the bread, and the whole thing. And, you know, you need to have context. And everybody knows about new wave music and hair metal and the rise of hip hop and the classic 80s hip hop gems from Houdini and Run DMC and Grandmaster Flash and big hair and big elbow pads and Duran Duran, and we know that stuff. But let's look at it through this prism of food that we still are feeling the effects of. And it's just remarkable. It
is, you know, and to give people a little context here, because for younger people, which we do have a very young audience, you know, they forget what infomercials were like and how wild those infomercials were. I mean, those infomercials almost feel like parodies today, but you know, they were they were real. And the Ginsu knife, the Ginsu knives was one of the things that people just made fun of for a long time. Is it okay if I show people a little bit of what that commercial was like?
Go for it, please do. I'll tell you some interesting facts about it after you show it.
Okay.
See through it. It cuts meat better than an electric knife and goes through frozen food as though it were melted butter. The Ginsu is so sharp
cut the can,
cut through a tin can and still slice a tomato like this. It can chop wood and still remain razor sharp.
You know, and this showed all the time so much, and they really sold these things. They seem cheesy today, but they sold these things well, man, to where you really wanted one.
Yeah, and the funniest thing about it was, A, Ginsu means nothing. It's a completely made-up name. Second of all, this Asian young man who is the chef in that commercial, if you see it, he's not a chef at all. He was an exchange student that someone knew that was working at the knife company, and he was the only Asian person they knew. The other thing is... are
you talking about this guy right here?
This dude is not a chef. He's an exchange student that somebody knew that was like, people won't know the difference, sure. And they go with Ginsu. And then on top of that, the Ginsu knives that we used filming this year, they are still technically under warranty. They were bought in 85. So they have a 50-year warranty. So the Ginsu knives are still under warranty.
Wow.
And I cut the rubber hose, I cut the can, I cut the bread, I chopped the wood. And I mean, I don't know if we had the full kit right there, but I did buy one. My mom and I saw a demo. And that's the other thing, too, by the way, that you can't talk about the 80s and not talk about a mall.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, really very telling. You know, we filmed in the Glendale Galleria. We filmed in Mall of America. We filmed in a mall in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, or Lancaster, excuse me, Pennsylvania. And the craziest thing is nowadays when we do all our shopping online, the malls are even becoming a bit of a relic. But back in the day, the idea of a bunch of stores under one roof with food and entertainment, this is too much. And people can't imagine what it was like when the malls hit. And a lot of businesses turned up their nose to appear in malls and suffered for it. The flip side is people don't realize Panda Express, the owners, the Chung family, had the Panda Inn, a restaurant in Burbank, California, and one of their regulars was opening the Glendale Galleria and said, we're trying to get food into this shopping thing. He's like, food next to shopping? Like, yeah, it's going to have food and shopping all under one roof. So like, I don't know. And he said, well, could you do like a scaled down version so you could bring Asian flavors to this part of California? And they took the Panda Inn and called it Panda Express, and it's still in the same place and still a family owned business. And for us to think about the mall as a new invention is crazy, but for us, we had the microwave, we had 30 minutes or it's free. We had, the 80s was an era where the white collar population, the white collar workforce, increased by a third. So businesses were pivoting to get the lunch crowd, hence Pizza Hut's personal pan pizza, which you can get in under 5 minutes, or Domino's where 30 minutes or it's free. People take these things for granted, but they were groundbreaking for their time. The Chicken McNugget was so ahead of its time. Believe it or not, McDonald's went to Gorton's, the fish stick company, to figure out how to bread their McNuggets.
Really?
Facts.
Wow, man, this is what I'm talking about. It's so fun learning about these things, man. It's almost like we take these fast food for granted, but it's this. So, yeah. And you know what? I will say this, because I want to also get in the mall culture that you're talking about. But just to talk about the '80s a little bit more, that really was a special time that just stood on its own, because that was, I think, pretty much the last decade where parents really kind of let their kids get away with eating trashy food. Maybe trashy is the wrong word. Maybe I can find a better word there.
Fun. I get you, and you're not wrong. We actually have an episode on it. You nailed it. Can you imagine in a million years, in 2022, parents being okay with candy cigarettes or chocolate cigars?
Yes.
Like chewing gum inside a plastic gun, candy boogers that you pick out of a nose, candy in coffins, candy in trash cans. But that's what we got. Garbage pail kids that were bleeding and exploded and all kinds of stuff. And that was the other thing, that you're right, we had freedom. We also had, one half of America was responding to Reagan talking about a desire to return to traditional American values and be this shining city on a hill. But then you had the counterculture, which birthed that alternative music and punk rock and the Breakfast Club and Garbage Pail Kids making fun of Cabbage Patch Kids and so on and so forth. But also you got to remember this. We all shared the same pop culture. This was not the time where we all had 90 streaming services, with all of which that have popular shows, but I've never seen one episode of Ozark or Handmaid's Tale or whatever, but huge swaths of the population have.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, back in the 80s, no. You had channel 2 through 13. Maybe you might have had cable, and you saw the same movies and you listened to the same records. And you heard about new music through DJs or going to a good record store. There was no streaming. There was none of that stuff. So the mall became this touch point for culture, and it was all about the interaction. And I think that's what I love too, is that when I mentioned to you that we recreated Bonkers Candy, or that we went back to, there's a chain in Southern California called Noggles that was from the 80s that went out of business, and 2 fans bought the chain and are bringing it back down to its design and everything. That you realize for people, it transcends food. Like our first episode was Big League Chew. And I told him, I said, that first bite of great Big League Chew is so much more than great bubble gum. It brings me back to Little League. It brings me back to childhood. It brings me back to my mom buying it for me. It brings me back to watching baseball with my dad. And then it becomes this kind of existential thing. And I love the way people respond. And then again, like I said, my friends and my relatives that were born in the 80s, don't really remember them, were born in the early 90s. They're just like, yo, that double-decker pizza looks insane, bro. Like, oh, that burger is, I want to just shove that in my face hole. And I'm like, yes, you do. It's delicious.
Yeah, it does seem wild today. And kids would really, I know kids they've heard this. It's blown their minds to know that there was a time when we went and bought candy that would emulate smoking cigarettes. or cigars. I mean, you can still get them today, but now it's sort of it's a niche thing. It's a it's a kitsch thing. They sell it now for $20, but we used to go to the store and get those for like 50 cents.
Absolutely. I remember getting them and my dad showing me how to roll up the pack in the sleeve of my T-shirt. And they would actually, little known fact, very often they would try to make them look as much like the real cigarettes, to the degree that the graphics department at the cigarette company would oftentimes send over templates to the chewing gum or the candy cigarette company so the pack looked similar. So there were Lucky Strike and there were all these other ones, and it was definitely, it was just remarkable that you had that kind of leeway. And remember, Reagan also said you could advertise directly to children.
Yeah.
And that's when you start seeing video game themed cereals, cartoon themed cereals, candy and chocolate integrated right into the plot of movies like the Baby Ruth and Goonies and the Reese's Pieces and E.T.
Yeah.
And my gosh, and in Adam Eats the 80s, we find Nintendo cereal, we find Mr. T cereal, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, Rubik's Cube, all had cereals.
I ate all of those, man. This is why, see, I can really relate to what you're saying, because my mother at the time, she didn't give a shit, really. She bought every new cartoon cereal that was out there. When you showed Smurfberry Crunch, I was all up on that, man. You got me. I tell you, you hit me, man. You hit me hard with that Mr. T cereal.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, there were certain ones. My mom would get those little boxes, like the sampler pack of the little tiny boxes.
Yeah.
I eat the sugar ones first, and then it always sucked on the 12th day because you asked if you left all brand, and that's a way for any kid to start the day.
Yeah.
And back in the day, because that's the truth, I remember being a young kid with my Aunt Ann and having Product 19 and Total and having Crispix with my father. And then suddenly, and like I said, I was a little bit of a chubby kid. So my mother, being a teacher and an educator, was much more about having like healthy cereals. That's why whoever invented Berry Berry Kicks, thank you from your boy right now, because that was like the first sweet, fun cereal I was allowed, because everything else had to be Cheerios or whatever. And all my friends were having these other great sugared cereals, and that only happened because Ronald Reagan allowed advertising directly to children. And in the 80s, it's been analyzed that parents in the 80s spent at least twice as much, if not 1.5 times as much, on their children than their parents spent on them. And the children were said to, because we were like the first generation of the baby boomers, of their children, and basically Madison Avenue said that kids had pester power, and once you had latchkey kids, we had agency. We could decide what we wanted to eat. Were you getting allowance, so we would be running wild in the streets with our candy cigarettes, getting drunk on root beer, and reading Mad Magazine, folding that A meets B.
Yeah.
Right, and that was and Mad Magazine and Cracked Magazine had some very advanced themes. They weren't profanity or pornography per se, but they were edgy enough that like, okay, this is different than, this ain't playground talk right now.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at what kids had available to them, it's kind of amazing. And parents, like you say, were allowing kids like Cocoa Crisp. That's a bowl of chocolate chip cookies. And then there'd be another one that's a bowl of marshmallows. And then a bowl of chocolate marshmallows.
Yeah.
It's I remember when Stephen Colbert went to Russia, he was letting someone try a Pop-Tart. He said, "This is what you might have for breakfast if your parents didn't like you very much."
Yeah, I remember it was such a great thing when I was there, and it's still around, but I was there for the time when Cookie Crisps came out, man. And, like I said, it's still around, but at the time they sold it so well. It was, it was such a, because they said have cookies for breakfast. And that was their whole sales pitch.
Absolutely. And by the way, the most ill-fated cereal among them, and certainly one of the best inside jokes between my friends and I, is Robin Hood. Well, it was called Prince of Thieves cereal, and the pieces of cereal were supposed to look like little arrows, but they didn't look like arrows. It looks like bachelorette party cereal. It's very rough. It's not an arrow. That's not an arrow. Take it from your Uncle Adam. That doesn't look like an arrow.
Yeah, it's
But the other thing,
I'm looking at it right here. Wow. Wow,
Yep,
what a
yep.
great way to start the day. Little penises and milk.
Here you go. Here you go, Sonny. Enjoy your both dicks. Have a wonderful day. But that's to me, the other thing is, you know, again, doing Food That Built America and talking about like Pabst and talking about Schlitz and talking about these guys and their entrepreneurial spirit and how it built Milwaukee, and we created a style of beer called American Lager, and then meeting Jim Cook. We filmed with Jim Cook during Adam Eats the 80s to talk about Sam Adams beer. And, you know, he became famous for making a recipe, no lie, he found in a chest in his attic under a stack of his dad's auto, like car magazines. And these guys have gone on to become millionaire, billionaire, blah, blah, blah. And we don't realize that in the 80s, because we were kids and everything was new and bright and shiny, especially in the 80s, that we were surrounded by entrepreneurs. Like the Chung family who started Panda Express had barely been in the country 2 decades. That Anne herself was at a farmer's market. And in point of fact, the mall owner wouldn't give her a spot because he's like, you want to do pretzels in Pennsylvania? Seriously? And he's like, I'm not giving you a spot in the food court. You're going to have this little place by the parking lot entrance. And as it turned out, the smell, the samples, and that guy, that mall manager, went on to buy a franchise.
Wow, nice.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm telling you, I have learned more. I'm going to show off and blow everyone away at the water cooler facts doing this show. Like, for example, Wally Amos, who founded Famous Amos, he discovered Simon and Garfunkel and represented them when he was an agent at William Morris. And he got the money to start the first ever Famous Amos store from Bill Cosby, Helen Reddy, and Marvin Gaye. Gave him his first checks to start the cookie business.
You know, I remember that. I remember, like, you know, these celebrities, these high-profile celebrities giving him the money to start the cookies, but I never knew that he started Simon and Garfunkel, man.
He was an agent at William Morris, and then he went into music management, and when that business sort of failed, he one of his acts, the music acts he represented, started bringing in cookies, and his Aunt Delia started making these cookies. And if you recall, the Famous Amos cookie was fairly small and thick, and it had pecans in it. It was like a little, almost like a ball. And it was his Aunt Delia's recipe, and he created, it never before been seen, a freestanding cookie restaurant. And, you know, he was an amazing marketer, and he opened at kind of a shady end of Sunset back in the day. And the problem was he had the creativity and a good product, but he just didn't have the business acumen. You flip that script and you look at Mrs. Fields, and you'll see this episode in Food That Built America. Mrs. Fields was a woman trying to start a business in the 80s, and she couldn't get any money. People laughed at her when she told them what she wanted to do. She got a loan for something ridiculous, like 21% interest. And her husband, I think, leveraged his house to get the loan. And she literally pounded the pavement in Palo Alto with samples of her cookies to make it happen. And I think that's the thing, is that Schlitz and Pabst happened a century before I was a twinkle in my dad's eye. But, you know, Mrs. Fields did this in the 20th century. Like, this happened in our lifetimes. Blimpie and Subway happened in our lifetimes. And then for me, you know, there's a place in Petaluma, California we filmed called Rancho Obi-Wan. That's the place, the Guinness Book of World Records largest Star Wars collection. And I swear, whoever's watching this or listening to this, you will watch that episode and you will go, I had that. My friend had that. I had those bench. I had that sleeping bag. That was my favorite pancake. Oh my! It's insane. My whole crew. We walked around. We were instantly like 8 years old. Like I didn't have the Millennium Falcon, but I had the Snow Speeder. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had 2 of Bespin Fatigue Han Solo, and oh yeah. Well, I have an original Greedo with the gun. It's like, dude. Like we have mortgages. What are we talking about right now?
Hey man, you know I love that. I just love your passion behind this, man. Yeah,
Thanks,
I can see
man.
you just enjoy talking about this so much. I want to just flip something here real quick and talk about
Just do it.
talk about you, man. Because so if I'm correct, you know, I was reading up on you. You have a master's degree from Yale School of Drama.
Correct.
So, you know, you've done some acting on shows out there. You're on several soaps and whatnot. Here, I would like to show a clip of you from Joan of Arcadia, where you play God in that, man.
What's your God? Oh my God! I haven't seen this in so long.
Oh,
I'm so
and look at this. Look at that handsome
Look
man
how much
right
hair
there.
I had. Look how much hair I had. Luckily,
Yeah.
I'm just as fat.
Let me play this because you were really good in this scene right here. I'm gonna play this for everybody.
Well,
I don't exist because people believe in me. I simply exist, whether they believe in me or not. Hanging on to beliefs, that's not truth. Open your mind, Joan. Read what Scott gave you. Be a part of that debate tomorrow. Here. Doesn't get any fresher than this. Just grounded.
You know, I know you enjoy hosting the show. I know that you're having fun with Man vs. Food and Adam Eats the 80s and all your other projects. But you were good in that scene right there. You're a good actor, man. You're a great actor. So
Very thoughtful.
would you like to do more acting?
you know what? I mean, I do miss it. It's funny. I had one legit audition since I had success with Man vs. Food and in television. And I'm rusty. I was okay. A casting director that had seen me coming out of Yale was kind enough to consider me for a role in, I don't know if you remember when Law & Order started doing like true crime stuff.
Yeah.
They did a miniseries on the Menendez brothers, and it was to play one of the lawyers who prosecuted them. And I just was a little too stagey. You know, the thing is with film acting, you have to be very small. You almost, it's like what my friend said about piloting a helicopter, like, you think right and you go right. You don't turn the joystick right. And so I was blessed. That Joan of Arcadia thing was one of my first things. And the director, Steve Gomer, and that's Amber Tamblyn, Joan herself, that I'm on camera with. And she is, you know, here I am, and my scene is with the lead in the show. You know, first name on the call sheet. And like she's ahead of Mary Steenburgen and Joe Mantegna and Jason Ritter. It's Amber Tamblyn is number one. There she is. And a more generous scene partner, I can't imagine. And I was following her lead, and I saw she had fun with it, and she was playing around a little bit. If you watch the whole scene, you can see she kind of improvs, and I kind of followed the lead. And I learned what scale to be at from watching her. So I was very, very, very fortunate. I'm so glad you showed that instead of my Slim Fast commercial. 'Cause that ain't pretty. Ain't nobody got time for that. It's out there, and feel free to search. But it's your boy had moves for a large white mammal. I actually brings it. You know, I will say I went to a party once and Chris Brown said I could dance. For whatever that's worth.
You know what? Man, listen, you have stage presence. You have you have charisma, man. You definitely have it out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't mind seeing you do some more acting. You know.
Thank you. I've been producing theater. I've been producing plays.
Oh, nice. You know, speaking of having such a charming demeanor, you were able to charm this man right here to where you say he was your mentor, Anthony Bourdain. How did that relationship get started?
He and Andrew Zimmern were the big dogs at Travel Channel when I started, and Well, you know, you grow up in New York, people know Les All, you know, they know, and then when he wrote Kitchen Confidential, any chef I ever worked with owned it, bought it, quoted it, talked about it. And a lot of the other people I knew sort of moved roughly in the same world. And you know, the success of Man vs. Food was pretty rapid, and we became first, you know, #1 show on the network pretty quickly. But I just knew, I knew in my heart that if I requested to meet him or I reached out to his people, that something in me said he won't like that. He'll think that I'm entitled, or he'll think, you know, who am I to summon or to request? You know what I mean? And Andrew Zimmern agreed to be on my show on Man vs. Food. Last episode of season 1 in Minneapolis, we went to Brasa Restaurant, which became one of my favorite restaurants in America. And that let me know that, immediately what the work ethic is to be a legend. Like Andrew Zimmern's work ethic, like you got to get up yesterday to outwork Andrew Zimmern today. Like there's a reason why he's where he is with a production company and shows and Emmys and Beard Awards. Andrew Zimmern grinds. So that let me know that, but also let me know that I was worth it, that I was worth maybe not seeing as a peer per se, but seeing as a colleague. And it gave me a little bit more confidence. And then Tony and I, eventually he reached out, which I'm really happy because I had met people from his production company and we hit it off. And he, you know, he's Bourdain, man. Dude's got juice.
Yeah.
For us to have the entire 3rd floor of the Spotted Pig to ourselves, just the 2 of us. And we had this, he arranged for this menu, and we ate pig face and all kinds of stuff, and drank Guinness early in the morning and talked about the Yankees and music and the favelas of Brazil and hearing the Muslim call to prayer in an Islamic country and how soul-stirring that is and everything. And I don't know if it's necessarily my charm. I think it was my willingness to stick up for myself because Tony sometimes kicked my ass. And I think because I was just willing to do the work. I like studying. I once remember Busta Rhymes saying, you know, you got to do your homework when you get in negotiations because then can't nobody cross your cheddar. And I remember it was just like, I'm going to do the work. I'm not a trained chef. I'm not going to say I am. I don't have a degree in culinary anthropology. I'm not going to lie and say that I do, but I'm going to study as hard as I can so I have enough of a culinary and anthropological background that when I say something about this dish, this city, this community, I'm not talking out of my ass like a ventriloquist. And Bourdain is like, he's like Sosa in Scarface. You know, there is no lying with you, Montana. And I think he dug that.
You know, that's a great analogy right there, man. I love that. And I feel happy for you that because if people don't know, Anthony Bourdain tragically has passed. A lot of people really love this guy who didn't even meet him. My wife, her and I went and got tattoos just based on his show where he went and got tattoos in New York. We went to the same place. So, you know.
What'd you get?
We went and got these, I forgot what it's called. It's the one where they do it with the stick, but
A poke and stick? You got a real poke and stick?
Yeah.
With the bamboo?
Yeah. The guy takes the ink, dips it in a little, takes the bamboo, dips in a little dish of ink and pokes you with it, man. And Anthony Bourdain, that was on his show. It was called Craft. I forgot what is some craft something.
It's known as poke and stick. It's a Thai or Indonesian and Thai modality of tattoo. And Andrew's got one. I just got my first tattoos, but I feel like a pussy by comparison because mine was like, it's the gun. Mine fades in 18 months. But it's a real tattoo, but mine are not poke and stick.
Yeah, well, you'll get more, man. That's how it always starts. So
so I like this one because there's a streetwear kind of legend named Upscale Vandal, who's a buddy of mine, and Vandal turned me on to this place, Ephemeral Tattoo, and they've developed a kind of ink that fades in 18 months. And so
Oh, okay.
because I practice the Jew craft, I couldn't get a tattoo for permanence, although I know many Jews who do. So I went and I got my first tattoo on this arm, and then I got my next two on this arm.
Yeah. Oh, hey, man, like I said, you got the fever now. You'll get more.
Oh, I already know my next two that I want.
Yeah, that's how it starts. Hey, man, I really do value the time that you're giving me. If you don't mind, I want to ask you just a couple of more things here.
Come on, let's do it, man. It's fun.
So, again, going back to Anthony Bourdain here, he told you, again, going from what I've researched and read, he gave you some advice on how to deal with people just giving you a lot of hate, just real toxic people, people who like we have trolls online. I think that was cool that he told you that, because obviously I guess he kind of, and like anybody who's high profile, they go through that. But what was the reason that you were getting so much hate at the time? Again, you seem like such a nice guy. Why were people hating on you?
Man, take your pick. You know what I mean? Someone told me a long time ago they want you to do well, just not better than them. So you had people who thought, I can eat more than you, I should have the show. You're annoying, I should have the show. You represent everything bad about American gluttony. You should have a heart attack and die. You're eating a lot while people are starving. Mm-hmm. Like there's some kind of causality between me eating hot wings in Pittsburgh and the pandemic of suffering. I don't have starvation. I don't get, but people who don't like my accent, my sibilant S. I wore a thumb ring on manvfood. People didn't like that.
Wow.
People didn't like, why do you wear a jacket? Why are your jackets so tight? Why did you go to this restaurant, not this one? How could you go to this city and not this city? You mispronounced habanero. I mean, it's just every damn thing. But believe it or not, the advice that I believe you're referring to actually came from not an altercation, but certainly an interaction between he and I. And I was just telling somebody about this. First of all, there's no guidebook on how to become, and I don't mean it in an arrogant way, but famous. No one tells you how to go from, an auditioning, working actor who's trying to pay off student loans to going into a room where everyone knows your name and has an opinion about you for better or for worse. And you know what I mean? There's no primer on that. And so then on top of this, when people you look up to who've never met you say hurtful or hateful stuff about you or your show, again, no one prepares you to go from someone who consumes pop culture to being part of it. So I personally, and I'll say this on your show and I'll admit it from the rooftops, like David Letterman, John Oliver, who I had met before at Madison Square Garden. We had a really great conversation, and he made a really cruel joke at my expense a season or two ago in his Himalaya or Everest episode. And I was the biggest John Oliver fan, and it hurt me. And Letterman had taken a shot at me, and because they didn't like the show, they felt the show glorified gluttony and was the worst, lowest common denominator type of food programming in the country, and were really reductive and hurtful about it. And meanwhile, here I am thinking I'm championing small businesses during a difficult time, and they're all getting 80 to 300% more business as a result of being on the show. I don't get paid. These places don't pay me to come to their places. And I was just happy paying off my student loans. I got my mom a car. I sponsored an entire Little League, and I sponsored a junior soccer club in England. And, I wasn't doing this for benzes and self-glorification. Anyway, my point is, after Letterman had ripped into me once just on his own, having this tirade after Rachel Ray was on, when Bourdain was on, he brought up the show again. And, I can't even look at his face.
Oh,
again,
I'm sorry, man.
I had it's all good. I had the top 10 book. Like, I was a Letterman fan, and when he brought it back up to Bourdain in equally insulting terms, instead of sort of defending me, which I had hoped Tony might have done, he kind of yes-anded and played along with the joke. And I wrote Tony a pretty heartfelt email saying, dude, I get you were in a situation, and I get you're clever, but I thought we were friends, and that really cut me. That really hurt. And I said, you know, maybe I sound like a little wounded bitch, like coming to you like this, and maybe I am. But the way I was raised is if you're my boy, I get your back till my bones collapse. That's it. That's the code I live by to this day. And he got that. And it's funny, someone said to me, I think you got the first apology out of Tony in 11 years or something. But he wrote to me, and I love that it wasn't just like, I'm sorry. Like, he really made it clear where he stood and didn't backtrack, and he wasn't mealy-mouthed. But he did teach me that there are people who are always going to root against you. That's just the way the world works. And he said, you have to do your job to the best of your ability in a way that makes you, you know, content when you lay your head down at night. Otherwise, if you worry about this stuff, you risk getting nibbled to death by ducks.
Yeah.
And that's a direct quote. And I remember he said at that point, some old photos of him and a sous chef swimming naked in like a lake somewhere in Europe or whatever had surfaced. And he said, look, I can sit there and get bent out of shape, or just, I'm not going to risk getting nibbled to death by ducks. I've got a wife, I've got a family, I've got my health. He had just started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You know, he had all these other things that he was involved in. He had a show and other movies, and he had just written a comic book. I mean, the guy was prolific. And it's weird because a lot of people talk to me about him because he was this lodestar for culinary honesty and adventure with a little bit of a FU. I'm going to walk to my own tune. But, you know, at the end of the day, my friend's gone, and we never got to go to that Yankee game together. And every time I see his face, it's weird. It's one of the first things I think about. We never got to go to that Yankee game together.
Yeah. You know, that's why today I've kind of adopted this whole thing of let me be careful about the last thing I say to somebody if I really like that person, because yeah, you know, you never know what if that last thing you say, if it's hurtful, that might be the last thing you say to that person. So yeah, you know.
No, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. When I was a bit heavier, I went to Australia to promo thing, and these girls thought I was DJ Khaled, and I was so offended. And then my friend brought it up right as I was about to go to the airport, and I haven't seen him since. And I was like, man, why you gotta bring that? Why you gotta bring that shit up right before I go, man? I'm out here. They're going, oh man, another one. I'm like, kiss my ass, man. I don't look like Khaled.
Yeah. Well, let me. You know, you talk about how you can't even stand to see David Letterman's face, and you were such a John Oliver fan. After those comments, do you still consider yourself a fan of John Oliver, or are you just done?
You know what? I don't wish him ill. I would love an opportunity. It was funny. I had written this long chain of tweets, and it wasn't vitriolic. It was because for context, he was saying how people were cavalier with using the term Everest. And he had done a montage. And in the montage, 75% of it was actually the new Man vs. Food host. There were clips of Guy Fieri, and then he used one clip of mine from the first 10 episodes of Man vs. Food, where I didn't write any of my own VO. Story producers wrote it all. And the line was, "This is my Everest," about eating a bunch of oysters. And he wrote, "Is it?" And it was kind of one of his memes. When he cuts back, he goes, and with a picture of me tucking the napkin in from Man vs. Food. And he goes, "Is it? I would think after hosting a show called Man vs. Food, your Everest is making it to 50 with the heart you started out with." And hearing people laugh, and what he's joking about is me dying. Now, bear in mind, my father had a heart-related illness, not due to weight or anything, just genetic, but and died at age 53. So this is something that's my pop right here, and it's something I'm particularly sensitive to. It's funny. I actually found the other one, so I'll hold it up to the camera so your wonderful audience.
Oh, nice. Is that you?
That's me and my dad at my bar mitzvah.
Oh, that's sweet, man.
There you go.
Very nice.
Thank you. But the other thing is, so you're going to show a montage, 75% of which isn't me, use a quote I didn't write to make a joke about my mortality. And yet when I met him in the owner's suite at Madison Square Garden, and we were talking about Premier League soccer and talking about certain players, completely affable, completely nice. his wife's in the armed forces, and so I talked about what I do with the armed forces. And then when that joke followed, I remember at first I thought I didn't hear it. Like I was like, wait, what? And I just can't watch it because it just hurts. And that's it. Maybe again, it makes me, a wussy about it all. But he took a shot at me, and I guess all's fair in love and comedy. I don't know, but he always seems to extol, like when Trump was in office, he would always comment on his cruelty or on other people's cruelty and insensitivity, and then he would make that joke. So I don't wish the man ill. I just wish I could meet him again face to face and just say straight up, like, you did this thing. It makes no sense. Why would you do that to somebody? And and let that cut me. And he may not care, and that's fine. Life sucks, get a helmet. But I can't watch those guys. And it's at Brooklyn, the old expression was, don't start nothing, won't be nothing. No, I'm not here to start some stupid row, and I don't have the platform, the prestige, the income, or the access that either one of those men do.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to sit there and get into a battle, or an unmatched battle with an opponent. And quite frankly, to think about it or talk about it anymore is just worthless. Like, he said what he said. I, at this point, cannot detach my hurt from his talent or the importance I find in his show. And I hope that changes. But for right now, I must respectfully decline.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And not to at all defend what he said. I'm not saying that. I'm not even trying to play devil's advocate here. Maybe I'm just trying to find a way that maybe I just want to ease the hurt that you feel a little bit. I don't know. But
okay.
Do you think that maybe because a lot of comedians, they, in humorous commenters, they often take it as, well, it's roasting, in a way. It's just me saying something where if this person has a sense of humor and they are a high profile person, maybe they understand, like, I don't really mean it. It's just a joke. And I know that's a bad thing to say sometimes, like, hey, I was just joking. But, they do have these comedy roasts, and a lot of times comedians take it to that level. Do you feel like he really didn't mean to hurt and thought that maybe you would understand and be able to take it?
I mean, maybe, when you're a lifer in the comedy industry, you develop a thicker skin, and you anticipate everyone else having a thicker skin. Or maybe he finds my program so odious he couldn't wait to take a shot at me, and he didn't want to do it in person for whatever reason. For all we know, he didn't write the line. He okayed it. He approved the joke. And maybe he thought I'd find it funny. I don't know. I'm not of the disposition to take jokes about my own death super lightly.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Well, you know what? Let me ask you one last thing. This would be a good way to transition into a discussion about how you take care of yourself while doing these shows. Because I was reading about it. Because I'm fascinated about how you prep for these shows. Because but and again, I'm reading about what you're doing because you talk about, because it is work. It is work the way I look at it, I imagine there's both physical and mental prep that goes into these shows. I read that before you would do a show or leading up to a season, you would exercise twice a day. Sometimes when it was possible, you wouldn't even eat before taping a show.
Right. Well, challenges were a different animal. Challenges, eventually, the first 10 episodes, that was really hard because no one had ever shot shows like this, so there were no breaks involved, and having to do these challenges and then get on a plane and sit in a highly pressurized environment, close, cramped quarters, and having to pack a suitcase and fold wardrobe and iron wardrobe when you're not feeling great. I mean, that was tough. Eventually, they would start shooting only a half day before challenges, so I had a chance to prepare. Yeah, I mean, now it's a bit different. So, like many people, I put on a lot of weight during the pandemic. I'm the first one to admit it. And I've just been working diligently to take it off because the truth of the matter is, and I I've been blessed to executive produce or produce a lot of the shows I've been in, and I know now from the research I've done that the heavier I am, the more concerned people are about me, and the more concerned they are about me, the less they are watching the actual show. And that's what I want them to do. I want them to catch the nostalgia fever. I want them to write to Domino's and say, oh my God, where can I get this breakfast pizza? Please bring it back. I don't want them to go, ooh, Adam, don't need another piece of pizza, brother. You don't look so great. And so it's hard because, you're doing a show, you're eating vintage candy and pizza. Keeping ketogenic is not really a realistic thing, but it's checks and balances, eating very light on the break, making sure we stay at hotels with gyms. My cameraman on the first couple episodes of Modern Marvels introduced me to a really cool app called All Trails, and it helps you find hiking trails wherever you are. And as we filmed around the country, there's been some really beautiful random trails that I've found. So that's been part of it. The other thing is cooking in your hotel room or buying actual food. I find that when I order in, it's too easy to go down that rabbit hole and eat a whole order of X, Y, and Z. So I remember we filmed an episode of Modern Marvels, which is one of the other shows I do on history. And we filmed a full 12-hour day at Stern Pinball, and I was so tired and cranky, and I pulled into the parking lot, and my legs were just like the Tin Man in Wizard of Oz. I was like, oh, okay. And I had to drive the next day to North Carolina from Chicago. And I remember I was like, all right, I went in, I bought hard-boiled eggs and sliced turkey and raw vegetables and bought some kombuchas and bought some unsweetened iced tea. And not only is it less money than you would spend, but, this was filming still when Delta was surging. And so I, wanted to mitigate my exposure, and someone in my family is currently fighting cancer and they're staying with me, and so me mitigating my exposure to COVID has been extremely important. So being able to I'll go into this supermarket, which means I don't go into this restaurant, I don't go into this rest stop, I have the food sitting shotgun. So that's been really key, and also just being a little more mindful. So when for Adam Meets the 80s, when we recreated the beef fat French fry from the original McDonald's French fry from the 80s and the vegetable oil McDonald's French fry, I had to go, okay, I'll go in 5 times, but after the 5th time, no more fries.
Yeah.
Because of these huge trays of these fries you can't get anymore. And they had this fresh ketchup that they had made, and it's this. And the whole room is mine, and we finished shooting in these 2 trays of fries, and I was like, I have to leave this room. I have to leave right now. And you have to instill that discipline. I have to decide, okay, I'm going to South Carolina. This is the truth. The last road trip for the Machines That Built America episodes of Modern Marvels, I drove from Brooklyn to Peachtree City, Georgia, to Chicago, to Cleveland, North Carolina, to Springfield, Mass. And I had to decide, okay, I can't do deep dish and barbecue again and clam chowder. So deciding where I want that good regional meal to be is crucial, because you can't just do what you want when you want. So that's, I guess, the biggest thing. And that's my advice to any traveler. If you're thinking about your weight, I recommend this, and I get no kickback. I'm not a partner or anything like this, but this All Trails app, I get there, I wake up before call, I try to get in 10,000 steps a day. I try to drink 100 ounces of water a day when I can. And then I decide, and I was like, okay, South Carolina, your boy's going eyebrows deep on some barbecue, but that meant in Chicago, it's grilled chicken salads. And that was exactly what I did.
Hey, good for you, man. Good for you. I mean, and I'm glad that you're taking care of yourself and aware that people actually, care about you and want to see you take care of yourself too. I mean, and listen,
thank you for saying that.
No, hey, man. And this isn't me just saying things because you're supposed to be polite in an interview. You are a real joy to talk to, man. This has been awesome. This has been just a, it's what I love about doing these with people like yourself. This has just been a real great conversation. And
that's very kind of you to say.
Well, it's very kind of you to spend your time with me, being such a busy person, executive producing your shows and everything. I know that your time is precious, and I really just thank you for taking the time out to do this. So I'm going to let you get back to it, man, but really this was a joy. And again, thank you so much.
No, the pleasure's all mine. And in point of fact, this show takes a lot of people to make it. We have, PAs, interns, COVID compliance officers, 2 camera ops, a brilliant director and co-producer, my buddy Matt Braley. And for me to have any chance to talk about the work that they've done and to make sure that their hard work gets seen, that's a great joy. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to exalt my coworkers, because they're wonderful.
Well, not only has this been fun, but it's been, like your show, very educational, man. It's so fun talking about it's so much fun talking about the period that I grew up in, and see somebody else have the equal appreciation for it, and just be able to relive some of those things that I relived, man. Congratulations on it all, and
thank you.
Continue success.
So much.
Yeah,
thank you so much. To you as well, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Adam. I'll talk to you later, man. See ya.
Godspeed. Bye now.
Bye. And there he goes, people. Great guy. I'm very honest, too. I love that he just kind of just put his emotions out there. Again, I'm very lucky to be able to do this. I'm very lucky to have you guys giving me the opportunity to do this. So check out this interview if you liked it. Go check out some of the other interviews that we've done. Let me go ahead and pull up the channel. Again, I don't do a whole lot of pushing on this channel, so not a whole lot of people are aware a lot of the times when I do this, but I'm going to start pushing this more because I'm doing more of these interviews now, and they're actually really good. And I'm not saying that because I'm a good interviewer. I'm saying that because these people, we've been very fortunate to get people who have a lot to say. So let me see here. Double Toasted Interviews. Very simple, right? Double Toasted Interviews. Let me see if I can go to the channel over here. DT Interviews, actually. And no, that's on our website. Let me see if I can find this. Let me type in YouTube. There we go. There we go. Sorry, y'all. And let me see here. Wow, we have a lot of channels, so a lot of stuff is coming up, but I think I found it. There we go, folks. There we go. Double Toasted Interviews. Did we not put up the latest interview that we had? Well, anyway, I don't know if these are archived old interviews or what, but yeah, there you go, folks. Double Toasted Interviews right there. Go check it out. And as you see, we've talked to a lot of great people. So, yeah, people, check it out when you get a chance. And thank you so much for being here. And as I just told you, I appreciate you. So don't you hesitate to ever email me, no matter when it is. It's not like when you email me, you're waking me up or anything. So whether it's day or night, please interview me. Let me start over. Please interview. No, that's what I do. I interview you and other people out there. But please email me. kcoolmans@gmail.com. That's KCOOLMANZ@gmail.com. You email us with any kind of questions, comments, compliments, insults, input, and or advice. Hit us up on the social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You got all that information down right there, those details. Memorize it, copy it down, use it. It's nothing if you don't use it. Also, people, if you find yourself here in Austin, Texas, and you would love to come and hang out with us, we would love to hang out with you. All I ask is that you just give us a heads up, a little bit of notice, so that we can clear our schedules. And whether you're moving here or just passing through, we love to clear our schedules, if you let us know ahead of time, and hang out with you. All right, everybody, that is it. Thank you, as always, for being here. And we'll see you on the next one. Good night, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you are listening to, or you happen to be watching this, goodbye and stay toasty.